welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager, October 5th, 2024. There's something wrong with the emergency broadcast system tonight. I've been managing WLUP for 6 years now, and I've never heard static like this. It's not the usual white noise. It's more like breathing, inhaling and exhaling through layers of electronic interference. The first anomaly came through at 2:14 a.m. I was alone in the station, running the overnight automation system and catching up on paperwork when the EAS monitor kicked in with that familiar attention tone. But instead of the standard test message or weather alert, there was just hollow static with what sounded like water lapping against a shore buried beneath the noise. Then 3 words, barely audible: movement beneath surface. That was it. No identification code, no timestamp, no issuing authority. Just those 3 words, then back to the rhythmic static before cutting off entirely. I checked the logs immediately. Nothing registered in the system. According to our equipment, no alert was ever received. I called the National Weather Service office in Marquette. The night meteorologist there, Dave, has been a reliable source for years. He assured me they hadn't issued any alerts, and their systems showed no record of any broadcast. Probably just interference from the solar flare activity, he suggested. It's been causing havoc with communications all across the Upper Peninsula. Maybe he's right, but solar flares don't form words. October 6th, 2024. Jacob dropped by the station this morning. The bags under his eyes told me he hadn't slept. His family has operated charter fishing boats on Lake Michigan for 3 generations, and I've never seen him this unsettled. I saw something out there last night, he said, declining my offer of coffee. His hands trembled slightly. I was out on the eastern shoals, night fishing for walleye where the shelf drops off. What kind of something? I asked, thinking about the strange broadcast. Lights. Under the water. Jacob leaned forward, lowering his voice though we were alone in the studio. Not reflections from the stars or the moon. These were moving in patterns, deep down where the lake bottom should be pitch black. I felt a chill despite the warmth of the station. Did you report it to the Coast Guard? Yeah. He laughed without humor. They thanked me for the report and asked if I'd been drinking. Said they'd look into it. The strange part is what happened when he tried to take photos. Jacob showed me his phone. Every image was distorted with the same bizarre interference pattern, concentric circles radiating outward from the center of each frame. That's not all, he added, scrolling to a video clip. Listen, he played the recording. Just dark water under moonlight, but the audio captured a low humming sound, rising and falling in an almost musical pattern. It reminded me of the static from the emergency alert. I've been on this lake my whole life, Emma. Never heard anything like it. After Jacob left, I spent my lunch break researching anomalous sounds recorded in large bodies of water. Most were easily explained: underwater earthquakes, large schools of fish, or mechanical noises from ships. Nothing matched what Jacob recorded. October 7th, 2024. It happened again tonight.
3:22 nachts.
This time, the emergency alert lasted longer, 17 seconds. Through the static, a monotone voice. Activity detected. Depth 437 meters. Maintain distance from shoreline. Again, no identification codes, no official source. I checked our weather monitors. Perfectly clear night. Not a cloud in sight. I immediately tried calling the Coast Guard station in St. Ignace, but only got an automated message saying all operators were currently unavailable. The phone rang 5 minutes later. It was Sheila from the Lakeview Motel at the edge of town. Emma? Sorry to call the station so late, but I just saw the weirdest thing and thought you might want to know, being the radio person and all. What did you see? I asked, already dreading the answer. All the water birds, the gulls, the herons from the marsh, even the ducks, they're leaving. Hundreds of them flying west, away from the lake. In the middle of the night. I've lived here 30 years and never seen anything like it. Birds don't flee without reason. I persuaded Tom, our night security guard, to drive with me down to the marina after my shift ended at 6 a.m. The lake looked normal in the pale dawn light, calm surface, gentle waves lapping against the shore. But something felt off. The usual morning crowd of fishermen preparing to head out was absent. Just a few boats bobbing in the harbor, and an unusual silence. Where is everyone? I asked aloud. Haven't you heard? Tom replied. DNR put a temporary restriction on the eastern waters yesterday evening. Something about unusual water quality readings. That's odd. As the manager of the only radio station in town, I'm always notified about DNR announcements so we can broadcast them. We received nothing. When I got home, I tried to sleep but couldn't stop thinking about the strange alerts and Jacob's lights. I called him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. On impulse, I checked the NOAA water monitoring database that tracks Lake Michigan public access, part of a citizen science initiative I'd reported on last year. The interface showed all monitoring stations along our coastline had gone offline simultaneously at 10:17 p.m. last night. Maintenance issues, probably. That's what anyone reasonable would think. October 8th, 2024. Something's happening with the weather. The forecast called for clear skies, but a thick fog has rolled in from the lake, unusually dense and localized just around our town. It doesn't behave like normal fog. It seems to pulse and shift in ways that defy wind patterns. 3 more emergency alerts came through today. The first at 9:47 a.m. Underwater acoustic anomalies detected. Origin unknown. Monitoring continues. Another at 2:33 p.m. Stay away from eastern shoreline. Water safety concern. Further instructions pending. And the most disturbing at 7:16 p.m. Do not approach water. Do not investigate unusual sounds or lights. Wait for authorized personnel. After the last one, I called every agency I could think of: FEMA, Coast Guard, Weather Service, State Police. Each transferred me to another, with no one claiming responsibility for the alerts. The state police dispatcher finally told me they'd received multiple similar reports, but had no information about their origin. I just spotted a convoy of unmarked black SUVs heading toward the lake access road. For vehicles, government plates. I called our local sheriff's office, and Deputy Williams said they received notification of a scientific research team arriving to investigate environmental anomalies in the lake. The fog is getting thicker. From my bedroom window, I can see the lake's edge, or where it should be. The fog seems to glow from within, pulsing with faint blue-green light. My phone just vibrated with an emergency alert notification. Test of the emergency alert system. This is only a test. If this had been an actual emergency, but when I opened it, the message displayed was different. Stay indoors. Close all windows. Do not look at the lake. This is not a drill. When I tried to show it to my neighbor, the message had changed back to the standard test notification. The strangest thing happened just now. Every electronic device in my house, TV, radio, phone, even my digital watch, emitted the same tone simultaneously. For 3 seconds, they all displayed the same message. Something is emerging. I can hear sirens in the distance, coming closer. From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager. October 9th, 2024. I barely slept last night. The fog never dissipated. If anything, it's grown denser, clinging to our town like a burial shroud. The air feels heavy with moisture, carrying an odd metallic taste that coats the tongue. This morning, I went live on air to ask listeners if they'd received any unusual emergency alerts. The phone lines lit up immediately. At least 24 people reported receiving the same message I did. Stay indoors. Close all windows. Do not look at the lake. But when they tried to show others or take screenshots, the messages reverted to standard test notifications. Some reported their devices acting strangely near the shoreline, batteries draining instantly, screens displaying random patterns of light. Mayor Wilson called the station during the broadcast, clearly agitated. He insisted I stop spreading panic and stick to confirmed information channels. When I pressed him about the alerts, he claimed they were the result of system testing by multiple agencies and cut the call short. Something in his voice sounded off, strained, like someone speaking with a gun to their head. I've known Richard Wilson for 15 years. He's never spoken to me that way. After my shift, I drove out to Jacob's place on the North Shore. His truck was in the driveway, but no one answered the door. Through the window, I could see his fishing gear scattered across the floor. Tackle box overturned, contents spilled everywhere. His boat wasn't at the dock. His dog, Max, who normally barks at any visitor, was nowhere to be seen. On my way back, I had to pass the Eastern Shore Access Road. It's been blockaded with concrete barriers and a checkpoint staffed by personnel in unmarked black uniforms. No agency insignias visible. They turned me around, claiming the area was closed due to environmental hazards. When I identified myself as local media, the guard simply repeated the same phrase word for word like a recording. I think I glimpsed something beyond the barricade. A large white tent structure. Equipment being unloaded from trucks. People in hazmat suits. October 10th, 2024. The official story broke this morning. The Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy issued a press release about unusual biophosphorescent algae blooms in our section of Lake Michigan. They're claiming the algae is releasing low levels of toxins that can cause mild hallucinations and respiratory irritation. Hence the beach closures and warnings to stay away from the water. It's a convenient explanation. Almost believable if you don't look too closely. Algae blooms don't explain the emergency alerts. They don't explain the fog that seems to follow specific patterns, retreating and advancing like it's breathing. They certainly don't explain what I saw last night. I couldn't sleep again, so I took my binoculars to the west hill that overlooks the town and lake. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the water where it penetrated the strange fog. Just after 2 a.m., I saw it. A ripple in the water about half a mile offshore. Not wind-driven waves or a boat wake. It moved in perfectly concentric circles, like something massive was rising toward the surface, then stopped abruptly. Minutes later, the water at the center of the ripples began to glow. A deep, pulsing blue much brighter than any bioluminescent algae I've ever seen. The glow expanded, forming what looked like geometric patterns beneath the surface. Perfect circles, then interlocking triangles, then complex fractal patterns I couldn't begin to describe. I counted 7 black boats converging on the location. Military-style patrol craft with no running lights. As they approached, the glow dimmed and disappeared. Transcription of emergency alert broadcast. WLUP Radio, October 10th, 2024, 8:17 a.m. Standard AS tone. This is an emergency advisory from the United States Coast Guard and Michigan Department of Natural Resources. Effective immediately, all watercraft activity on Lake Michigan is prohibited within a 20-mile radius of Whitewood Township shoreline. Unusual underwater currents and potentially toxic algae blooms have been detected in this area. Residents are advised to avoid contact with lake water and report any unusual sightings or symptoms including headaches, disorientation, or visual disturbances to local authorities. This restriction will remain in effect until further notice. This is not a test. End of transmission. Journal continues, October 10th, 2024. I met someone interesting today. Dr. Vivian Reed arrived at the station requesting airtime for a public health announcement. She identified herself as a marine biologist from the University of Michigan, sent to study the alleged algae bloom. Mid-40s, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the careful way of speaking that scientists often have. Precise, measured, but something felt off. Her university ID looked new, And when I mentioned Jacob's sighting of underwater lights before the official algae story broke, she flinched almost imperceptibly. She recovered quickly, suggesting bioluminescent phenomena can often appear strange to untrained observers. After recording her bland public safety message, avoid the water, report symptoms, the usual, I asked her directly about the emergency broadcasts and the military presence. That's when things got interesting. She glanced at the studio door to ensure it was closed, then lowered her voice. The algae story is containment. Something's happening in the lake, but it's not algae. She wouldn't elaborate further in the studio, suggesting we might have listeners beyond the walls. We agreed to meet at the Pine Grove Diner tonight. I'm going early to sweep the booth for any surveillance devices. That sounds paranoid even as I write it, but after what I've seen, paranoia seems like reasonable caution. October 10th, 2024, late entry. Dr. Reed was more forthcoming at the diner, though she spoke carefully, often disguising our conversation as casual small talk whenever the waitress approached. I am a marine biologist, she confirmed, but not here officially through the university. I was contacted directly by someone at NOAA who's concerned about what's happening here. The data coming from your lake section doesn't match any known biological phenomenon. She showed me readings on her tablet, sonar images from before the government shut down public access to the monitoring systems. The lake floor shows a perfect circular depression, nearly a mile wide, that wasn't there in surveys from last year. At the center of the depression is what the sonar registers as a solid mass, roughly dome-shaped. Whatever it is, she said, it's generating electromagnetic frequencies that shouldn't be possible underwater. Patterns too regular to be natural. When I asked if it could be a secret military installation or sunken vessel, she shook her head. The structure is changing, growing. These readings show a 17% increase in mass over just 3 days before they cut the feeds. That's when the diner's TV, radio, and every cell phone present suddenly emitted the emergency alert tone simultaneously. The message was longer this time, and everyone heard it. Attention! Unusual seismic activity detected in Lake Michigan. Residents within 5 miles of shoreline advised to prepare for possible evacuation. Stand by for further instructions. Dr. Reed's face went pale. She whispered, "It's accelerating." As we left the diner, 3 military helicopters flew low overhead toward the lake. The fog parted briefly, and I swear I saw the water glowing in the distance, pulsing like a heartbeat. Dr. Reed promised to meet me tomorrow with more information. She's staying at the Lakeside Inn and has equipment she wants to set up near the shore, away from the military blockades. Before she left, she warned me, "Whatever you do, if you hear something calling from the water, voices, music, any sound that draws you toward the lake, ignore it. Cover your ears and run the other way." I'm left wondering what she knows that she isn't telling me. The fog is seeping under my door now, curling across my floor like seeking fingers. The air smells like ozone and salt. Not lake water, ocean salt. We're hundreds of miles from the ocean. My radio just turned itself on. Through the static, I can hear what sounds like singing. From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager. October 11th, 2024. The singing from my radio lasted exactly 7 minutes before cutting to static. It wasn't in any language I recognize, not even sure it was human. The melody moved in impossible intervals, notes that shouldn't exist between the standard tones. I recorded it on my phone, but playback reveals only white noise. The recording equipment at the station might capture it better. I'll try tonight. This morning brought a new development. National Guard vehicles began arriving before dawn. I counted 12 Humvees and 3 larger transport trucks passing through town. They've established a forward operating base at the Old County Fairgrounds. Captain Howard Reeves held a brief press conference on the courthouse steps at 0900, which I attended as LUP's representative. Captain Reeves is straight from central casting for a military commander. Squared jaw, perfect posture, a voice that expects obedience. He stated that the National Guard has been deployed as a precautionary measure to assist with possible evacuation needs related to the environmental situation. When I asked directly about the nature of the situation, he deflected with practiced ease. "We're simply here to ensure public safety while environmental authorities complete their assessment," he said. "There's no cause for alarm. Please continue normal activities while avoiding restricted areas." I pressed him about the emergency alerts. His expression never changed, but his eyes hardened. "Any emergency communications not directly issued through official channels should be reported to authorities immediately. Interference with emergency systems is a federal offense." After the press conference, I noticed a soldier photographing everyone who had asked questions. Transcript of call received at WLUP Radio, October 11th, 2024, 11:23 a.m. Emma. WLUP Community Radio, this is Emma speaking. Caller. Voice distorted, possibly disguised. Emma, listen carefully. I don't have much time. I work at the weather monitoring station on North Point. The readings we're getting from the lake aren't being released to the public. Emma, what kind of readings? Caller. The water temperature in a concentrated area about 2 miles offshore has increased by 27 degrees in the last 48 hours. And there's something else, the water density is changing, becoming more viscous in perfect concentric circles around the anomaly. Emma, who are you? How do you know this? Caller. Sound of door opening in background. They're watching all communications. The thing in the lake, it's responding to radio frequencies. Every broadcast triggers. Call terminates. End of transcript. Journal continues, October 11th, 2024. I tried tracing the call, but it came from a burner phone, now disconnected. I took the recording to Dr. Reed at the Lakeside Inn, but she wasn't in her room. The desk clerk said she checked out early this morning, or rather, her belongings had been collected by government representatives who presented paperwork authorizing them to secure her possessions as part of an ongoing investigation. This is moving too fast. People are disappearing. First Jacob, now Dr. Reed. On my drive back from the inn, I noticed something disturbing. The fog has developed a pattern. Tendrils extending from the lake, following the town's waterways and drainage systems. It's thickest around water sources, as if seeking them out. The creek that runs behind the radio station, usually a thin trickle this time of year, was flowing backward this morning, toward the lake instead of away from it. Transcription of emergency alert broadcast. All channels, October 11th, 2024, 3:42 p.m. Standard EAS tone, but with audible distortion. This is an emergency directive from the Department of Homeland Security in coordination with the Centers for Disease Control. Effective immediately, all residents of Whitewood Township must boil water before consumption or physical contact. An unknown contaminant has been detected in the municipal water supply. Symptoms of exposure may include disorientation, auditory hallucinations, and unusual dream patterns. If experiencing these symptoms, do not seek medical attention. Remain in your home and await specialized medical teams. Compliance is mandatory under federal disaster protocols. Brief burst of crackling static, then IT speaks through water. Return to standard EAS tone before end of transmission. Journal continues, October 11th, 2024. Those three words, IT speaks through water, weren't part of the official message. I called the station immediately. My assistant Tom confirmed the phrase broadcast over our air. When I checked social media, people all over town were posting about it. Some heard it, others didn't. The phrase doesn't appear in any official transcript of the alert that was later provided to media outlets. Is someone hijacking the emergency system? Or is something else communicating through it? This afternoon, I drove out to Jacob's favorite fishing spot on the eastern shore, a small cove called Whisper Point that's still accessible if you hike in through the state forest instead of taking the main road. The military hasn't blocked the hiking trails yet. The lake looked wrong. The water near the shore had a viscous quality, more like oil than water, with a rainbow-like sheen across its surface. Small ripples moved across it in geometric patterns, perfect hexagons that shouldn't be possible in natural wave formation. I found Jacob's boat, partially beached in the cove. Empty, no sign of struggle. His fishing gear was still there, including his prized custom rod. Jacob would never abandon that voluntarily. On the boat's hull, just above the waterline, was a perfect pattern of circular markings, like suction cup marks, but each the size of a dinner plate, arranged in what looked almost like writing. Inside a compartment beneath the seat, I found Jacob's waterproof camera. The memory card was intact. I've downloaded the images but haven't had the courage to look through them yet. The last recorded timestamp is 11:37 p.m. on October 7th, the night before he disappeared. As I was leaving the cove, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the trailhead in the distance. Men in hazmat suits began unloading equipment. I stayed hidden in the tree line and made my way back to my car through the forest instead of taking the trail. October 11th, 2024, late entry. I finally viewed the images from Jacob's camera. Most are typical fishing photos from that evening, sunset over the lake, a few decent-sized walleye. Then, starting around 10:15 p.m., the images change. First, strange lights beneath the water, just as he described to me. Blue-green illumination that seems to pulse rhythmically. The next series shows the water beginning to rise in a perfect dome about 50 yards from his boat. Not splashing or churning, rising as if being pushed up from below, the surface tension somehow maintaining its integrity. The final image is the most disturbing. Taken at 11:37 p.m., it shows what appears to be an enormous eye just beneath the water's surface. Not a fish eye or anything recognizable. The pupil is perfectly geometric, a hexagon rather than a circle, and the iris appears to contain shifting patterns of light like constellations moving in accelerated time. The image quality is remarkably clear despite being taken at night. Too clear, in fact, as if the object itself was generating light for the photograph. I tried sending the images to a photographer friend in Chicago for analysis, but the email bounced back with an error message. Content violates security protocols. I hadn't even attached the images yet when the message appeared on my screen. Something is monitoring my communications. There's a town hall meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. Captain Reeves and Mayor Wilson will be addressing community concerns about the lake situation. I need to be there, but I'm increasingly unsure whom to trust. The mayor's behavior has been erratic, and there's still no sign of Dr. Reed. The emergency broadcast system just activated again on my phone. This time, just a single line of text. Do not trust their voices. They are already changing. Outside my window, the fog continues to thicken. Within it, I occasionally glimpse brief flashes of light, like distant lightning, but confined within the mist itself. The air smells increasingly of salt and something else, something ancient and organic like the floor of a sea cave. I just heard a vehicle pull up outside. Headlights through the fog. Someone's knocking at my door. From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager. October 12th, 2024. I almost didn't answer the door last night. Good thing I did. It was Dr. Reed, soaking wet and shivering despite the mild temperature. She refused to say how she'd evaded the people who had taken her belongings, only that she'd gotten away and needed somewhere to hide. Her eyes were bloodshot, pupils dilated, kept glancing at my faucets and drains as if expecting something to emerge from them. They're lying about everything, she whispered, even though we were alone in my house. The thing in the lake, it's not just one organism. It's a colony, a network, and it's been there for a very long time. She showed me readings from specialized equipment she'd managed to keep with her. A custom-built spectral analyzer designed to detect unusual electromagnetic frequencies. The pattern was like nothing I've seen before, perfect mathematical sequences that repeated with slight variations, like a language. It's communicating, she said, and not just within itself. It's learning our communications. Television, radio, internet, all of it traveling through the air as electromagnetic waves. It's absorbing our broadcast patterns and replicating them. This would explain the emergency alerts. Dr. Reed believes the government has known about the entity, her word for it, for months, possibly years. The recent activity is just the first time it's become noticeable enough to require public containment. They've been studying it, she told me, trying to communicate with it. That's why they shut down all the monitoring stations so quickly. Not to prevent panic, but to maintain exclusive access. I asked the obvious question, what is it? Where did it come from? I don't know exactly, she admitted. But carbon dating of trace elements collected near the depression suggests it's been dormant for approximately 15,000 years. Since before Lake Michigan was even formed. She slept on my couch, though slept might be generous. Every time I checked, she was staring at the ceiling, muttering equations to herself. She left before dawn, saying she needed to collect more samples before the military expanded their containment zone. Made me promise to record any emergency broadcasts that come through the station, especially the anomalous ones. Transcript of emergency broadcast, all channels, October 12, 2024, 6:17 a.m. Standard AS tone with noticeable harmonic undertones. This is an urgent update from the Department of Homeland Security. By executive order, Whitewood Township and surrounding areas within a 15-mile radius of Lake Michigan shoreline are now under mandatory quarantine. All roads exiting the containment zone have been closed. Residents attempting to leave will be detained for medical evaluation. This measure is necessary to prevent spread of waterborne contaminants. Compliance is mandatory. 3 seconds of fluctuating tones. We rise to meet you. Return to standard AS tone before end of transmission. Journal continues, October 12, 2024. The town hall meeting was a controlled disaster. The high school gymnasium was packed. Nearly everyone in town showed up, panic barely contained beneath a veneer of Midwestern stoicism. Mayor Wilson looked like he hadn't slept in days, his hands visibly trembling as he introduced Captain Reeves. Reeves dominated the room, his voice projecting calm authority as he explained the necessary temporary measures being taken. He confirmed the quarantine but assured everyone it was strictly precautionary and would be lifted once the biological anomaly in the lake is fully understood and contained. When questioned about the nature of this anomaly, he stuck to the algae bloom story, adding details about unusual microbial mutations potentially caused by industrial contaminants from across the lake. He emphasized that the National Guard was here to protect and support, not to restrict or control. Everything he said was reasonable, measured, reassuring. And every instinct I have tells me it was all lies. I tried to ask about the emergency broadcasts containing unauthorized messages. He deflected, claiming such reports were confusion resulting from transmission errors. When I mentioned the specific phrases, "IT speaks through water," and "we rise to meet you," a muscle twitched in his jaw. He didn't deny their existence. All communications are being affected by the unusual electromagnetic activity from the lake, he said instead. We advise residents to rely only on in-person information from authorized personnel. After the meeting, I was approached by a soldier who identified himself as Lieutenant Mercer. He requested a brief interview regarding my communications expertise. I was escorted to a makeshift office in what used to be the principal's room. The interview was anything but brief. For 2 hours, he questioned me about every aspect of LUP's broadcasting equipment, signal strength, backup systems, how many people had access to the emergency alert system. His questions were technical, specific, and felt like they were building toward something he wouldn't explicitly state. Has your station experienced any unusual autonomous behavior? He finally asked. Equipment activating without human input? Pattern disruptions in automated systems. I decided to test him. I mentioned the singing I'd heard through my radio, the impossible melody that couldn't be recorded. His reaction was immediate and telling. He pressed a button on his radio and 2 armed soldiers entered the room. Ms. Kelly will need to be debriefed at the main facility, he told them. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Fortunately, chaos intervened. Emergency sirens throughout the town suddenly activated simultaneously. Not the standard test pattern, but a wailing, pulsing sound that rose and fell in those same impossible intervals I'd heard in the singing. The soldiers were momentarily distracted, and I slipped out during the confusion. From the emergency broadcast transcript log, October 12, 2024, multiple times throughout day. Standard alerts interrupted by fragments of unknown origin, compiled from various broadcasts. Frequencies match historical patterns. 15,000-year dormancy ending. Awakening protocols initiated. We recognize your signals. Convergence imminent. Journal continues, October 12, 2024. Late entry. I've been hiding at the old fire watchtower on Blackridge Mountain for hours. It gives me a clear view of the lake and town below. What I'm seeing defies explanation. The fog has formed a perfect circle around Whitewood, exactly matching the quarantine boundary. Not approximately exactly, as if the military didn't establish the boundary, but rather the fog itself determined where they would place it. The lake is changing. Near the shore, the water moves in synchronized patterns, ripples forming perfect geometric shapes that hold their form despite wind and current. Further out, where the military has established a perimeter of boats, the water appears to be rising in a massive, gradual dome nearly half a mile in diameter. Most disturbing of all are the lights beneath the surface. They've formed what looks like a vast network, pulsing strands of bioluminescence connecting in complex patterns that remind me of neural networks or circuit boards. The pattern is expanding, reaching toward the shore in deliberate tendrils. I've been monitoring radio frequencies with a portable scanner. The military channels are heavily encrypted, but fragments break through occasionally. Words like protocol breach, containment failure, and most worryingly, asset awakening. My phone hasn't had service since the quarantine began, but it just received a text message from Jacob's number. Emma, not Jacob Water, changed me, coming to explain. Don't trust Reeves, knows more than telling military, woke it up years ago. No punctuation, no capitalization. Not Jacob's typing style at all. But if not Jacob, who or what? The town's emergency siren system just activated again. But this time, it's not producing an alarm. It's speaking. A synthesized voice created from the modulating wail of the sirens themselves. We have been patient. We have been waiting. Your signals reached our depths. We answer. We rise. Below, I can see military vehicles converging on the lakefront. Searchlights sweep across the water's surface, illuminating the fog from within. The dome in the center of the lake continues to rise, water defying gravity in a way that shouldn't be possible. The strangest part? I don't feel afraid anymore. I should be terrified, but instead, I feel a growing sense of anticipation. As if I've been waiting for this moment my entire life without knowing it. I'm going back down to town. I need to find Dr. Reed. I need to understand what's happening. The water in my canteen is moving, forming patterns against the sides of the container. Tiny ripples arranging themselves into what almost looks like writing. From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager. October 13, 2024. I made it back to town just before midnight. The streets were deserted, not from evacuation orders, but fear. Behind locked doors and drawn curtains, I could sense the town holding its collective breath. Military vehicles patrolled in pairs, searchlights sweeping across empty streets. I kept to the shadows, avoiding their routes. The fog has changed. It no longer simply hangs in the air. It moves with purpose, coiling and shifting like it's searching for something. When the military vehicles pass through it, the fog briefly parts, then closes behind them, as if studying their movements. I tried to reach Dr. Reed at our prearranged meeting spot, the abandoned boathouse at Miller's Point, but she never showed. Instead, I found her notebook, waterlogged but still legible, containing observations and hastily scrawled equations. The final entry chilled me. The entity isn't invading, it's returning. This was its domain long before the lakes formed, before humans arrived. We are the invaders. The military knows this. They've translated enough of its patterns to understand it considers this region its territory. The organism stretches deep beneath the lakebed, possibly connecting to a larger network. What we're seeing emerge is merely a fraction of its true form, like the tip of an iceberg. God help us when the rest awakens. Sleep was impossible last night. The emergency sirens activated 4 separate times, each broadcast longer and more coherent than the last. The final message came through every device in my house simultaneously. We remember your kind from before the waters. Your ancestors knew us. They gave us offerings. They understood. You have forgotten. We will remind you. Offerings. The word makes my skin crawl. What kind of offerings would satisfy something that has lain dormant in the depths for 15,000 years? Transcript from WLUP Emergency Broadcast Override October 13th, 2024, 6:03 a.m. No S tone. Broadcast begins with sound of water lapping. This message is for the people of Whitewood. I was Jacob Whitmer. Voice fluctuates between recognizable human speech and fluid, modulated tones. I have been changed. The waters have accepted me. They are ancient beyond comprehension. They were here when this land was seabed, when your ancestors were nothing but small mammals hiding from greater predators. The entity you fear is not malevolent. It is curious. It sleeps for millennia, awakens briefly to observe the changes, then returns to its slumber. But your military disrupted its cycle. Their probes, their signals, their attempts to communicate, they woke it prematurely. And now it seeks to understand what has evolved in its absence. Emma, if you're listening, come to Whisper Point. Come alone. I can show you what I've become, what we all might become. Sound of water rushing, then silence. Journal continues, October 13th, 2024. The voice on the radio was Jacob's. I'd know it anywhere, but distorted, as if he was speaking underwater without drowning. I didn't want to believe it was really him, but something in my core knew the truth. Whatever's in the lake has changed him. I debated for hours whether to go to Whisper Point. Every rational thought screamed it was a trap. But if there was even a chance of finding Jacob, of understanding what's happening, the decision was made for me. 3 military Humvees pulled up outside my house around noon. I slipped out the back just as they were breaking down my front door. I heard them ransacking the place as I fled through the woods behind my property. They're looking for me specifically. I've become a person of interest, perhaps because of the radio broadcast mentioning me by name, perhaps because they suspect I know too much. Either way, I can't go back home. I'm writing this from an abandoned hunting cabin about 2 miles from Whisper Point. The lake is visible through the trees. The massive dome of water has grown larger, now reaching nearly 30 feet above the normal water level. It doesn't splash or fall. It simply holds its shape, defying physics. The lights beneath the surface have organized into more complex patterns, pulsing in sequences that almost seem like coded transmissions. I'm going to Whisper Point at dusk. If Jacob is there, whatever remains of Jacob, I need to see him. I need answers. I'll hide this journal in the cabin in case I don't return. October 13th, 2024, late entry. I found Jacob. God help me, I found what's left of him. He was standing knee-deep in the water at Whisper Point, facing the lake. From behind, he looked normal, same flannel shirt he always wore fishing, same worn baseball cap. But when he turned, his face has changed. His features are still recognizable, but his skin has taken on a translucent quality, with faint blue-green bioluminescent patterns visible beneath the surface, the same patterns visible in the depths of the lake. His eyes have changed the most, the irises now containing that same hexagonal pupil I saw in his final photograph. Emma, he said, his voice fluctuating between the Jacob I knew and something else, a liquid, multi-layered sound. You came. I kept my distance at the shoreline, fighting every instinct to run. What happened to you, Jacob? Evolution. He smiled, and I glimpsed row upon row of small, sharp teeth behind his lips. The entity doesn't wish to destroy us. It wishes to improve us, to help us adapt to the changing world. It's been watching humanity for thousands of years during its brief awakenings. It's seen what we've done to the planet. It believes it can help us survive what's coming. What's coming? My voice sounded small against the lapping of the waves. The great shift, climate collapse, the waters will rise. Much of the land will be reclaimed by the sea. The entity has seen this cycle before. It knows how to adapt, how to thrive in changing conditions. It's offering us that knowledge, that ability. He extended his hand toward me. His fingers were elongated, webbed with a thin, translucent membrane. It's not painful, Emma. The transformation is enlightening. I can feel the currents of the entire lake. I can sense every fish, every plant. I'm connected to something vast and ancient and wise. I took an involuntary step backward. You're not Jacob anymore. I'm more than Jacob now, he corrected. I retain all his memories, his feelings. I still care for you, Emma. That's why I wanted you to be among the first. The entity has chosen specific individuals to serve as interfaces, bridges between humanity and itself. You're one of them. Has been watching you through the water. Every glass you drink, every shower you take, it's been learning you. That's when I noticed the markings on my arms, faint blue lines beneath my skin that pulsed in rhythm with the lights in the lake. How long have they been there? I don't remember them appearing. It's already begun, Jacob said softly. The water you've consumed, the fog you've breathed, microscopic parts of the entity entering your system, preparing you. You've been feeling it, haven't you? The pull toward the lake. The sense of anticipation rather than fear. He was right. Despite the horror of seeing Jacob transformed, I wasn't afraid. I felt curious, drawn. Our conversation was interrupted by the sudden appearance of military helicopters overhead. Searchlights swept the shoreline. Jacob melted backward into deeper water with inhuman grace. They can't stop what's coming, Emma. No one can. The entity has been patient for 15,000 years. Can be patient a little longer, but it will not be denied its awakening. His voice carried clearly despite the helicopter noise. Watch the emergency broadcast system tonight. The entity has fully mapped our communications networks now. It has something to show everyone. He disappeared beneath the surface, leaving only expanding rings on the water. I ran before the helicopters could spot me, the blue lines on my arms pulsing with each heartbeat. I need to find Dr. Reed. I need to understand what's happening to me. The water. It's in the water. It's in all of us now. From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager. October 14th, 2024. The power went out across town at exactly 3:17 a.m. I know because I was staring at my watch, counting heartbeats, trying to convince myself the blue lines beneath my skin were just a trick of the light. When darkness fell, those lines illuminated my forearm with a soft, pulsing glow that matched the rhythm coming from the lake. I wasn't the only one. Through windows, I could see other confused residents examining their own glowing skin patterns. Some in panic, others in eerie calm fascination. The patterns are different on each person. Mine form what looks like branching river deltas, while others have concentric circles or wave-like patterns. They all pulse in perfect synchronization. Dr. Reed found me just after dawn. She looked haggard, dark circles under her eyes, her typically immaculate appearance disheveled. The blue patterns on her neck form what looks like gills. They detained me, she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder as we huddled in the back storeroom of the now-abandoned pharmacy. 3 days of questioning. They know so much more than they're telling anyone. She showed me photographs smuggled from the military's mobile research center, core samples taken from deep beneath the lakebed. The samples contained fossilized remains of something that resembled coral, but with an impossible cellular structure more advanced than any known organism. Carbon dating placed them at over 400 million years old. The entity isn't extraterrestrial, Reed explained, her voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. It's preterrestrial. It evolved on Earth before our concept of life even existed. It's been dormant, evolving slowly across geological timescales. What we're seeing now, these patterns, these changes, it's the entity communicating through biochemical means. What does it want? I asked, my glowing arms illuminating our hiding place. Symbiosis, Reed answered, or conversion. The distinction may not matter to it. Emergency Broadcast System transcript, October 14th, 2024, 11:42 a.m. Standard AS tone plays, followed by high-pitched oscillating sound. This is an emergency alert for all residents of Whitewood County and surrounding areas. Remain indoors. Do not approach the shoreline. Do not consume tap water. Martial law is now in effect. Multiple breaches have been confirmed along the northeastern shore of Lake Michigan. Military personnel are responding to the situation. Citizens are ordered to shelter in place until further notice. Brief static interference, then. WEAREBREAKINGTHROUGH. Return to standard broadcast voice. Repeating. This is not a test. All citizens must remain indoors. Approaching water sources of any kind is strictly prohibited. Those exhibiting unusual physical symptoms should report to designated medical checkpoints for evaluation. Signal cuts out. The broadcast played on every radio, every television, every phone simultaneously. The military's voice interrupted by something else. Something using our own emergency systems against us. I watched from the pharmacy's back window as soldiers in hazmat suits escorted people with advanced skin patterns to armored transport vehicles. The soldiers' movements were methodical, emotionless. Several citizens went willingly, walking with an almost serene expression. Others were dragged, screaming about voices from the water calling them home. Captain Reeves appeared on Main Street around noon, directing operations from a makeshift command center. Through my binoculars, I could see the blue patterns creeping up his neck, despite his attempts to hide them beneath his collar. The entity has infiltrated the military leadership too. Dr. Reed and I were planning our next move when we felt it. A tremor that shook the entire town. Not an earthquake. Something emerging. We reached the bluff overlooking Stillwater Cove just in time to witness the first confirmed emergence. The lake water rose up, not as a wave but as a massive, organized column approximately 60 feet in diameter. It held its cylindrical shape for several seconds, defying gravity, before the surface began to transform. The water hardened, developing a chitinous, translucent shell with that same blue-green bioluminescence pulsing beneath. What emerged wasn't a creature as we understand them. It was a structure, a massive organic tower that continued rising from the lake, unfolding and expanding like some impossible living architecture. Appendages sprouted from its sides, not tentacles, but something more purposeful, like antennae or sensory organs. The entire structure pulsed with light that seemed to be transmitting complex patterns. Military helicopters approached, but hesitated to fire. Through my camera's zoom lens, I could see why human figures were embedded within the translucent shell of the structure. People from town who had gone missing over the past week, now suspended within the entity's mass, still alive but changed. Jacob was among them, his transformed face visible near what appeared to be a central node of the structure. "It's not just an organism," Dr. Reed whispered, her scientific detachment momentarily shattered by awe. "It's a colony, a hive, and it's incorporating us." The town's emergency sirens burst to life, but instead of the usual warning tone, they emitted a modulated sound that perfectly matched the pulsing light patterns of the structure. Around us, people who had been hiding in their homes began emerging, walking trance-like toward the shore, their skin patterns glowing brightly. Captain Reeves ordered his remaining troops to create a perimeter, stopping townspeople from reaching the entity. But the soldiers were affected too. Many simply laid down their weapons and joined the procession. Those who resisted clutched their heads in pain as their own biological patterns brightened. I don't know why Dr. Reed and I weren't compelled to join them. Perhaps our patterns haven't progressed far enough, or perhaps the entity has other plans for us. Either way, we withdrew to higher ground as chaos erupted below. The military's remaining loyal forces attempted to evacuate unaffected citizens, but panic swept through the crowds. I watched in horror as a transport helicopter carrying evacuees suddenly veered off course and flew directly into the entity's structure. Rather than destroying it, the helicopter and its passengers were simply absorbed, the metal and flesh incorporated into the growing colony. By dusk, 3 more structures had emerged at different points along the shoreline. All communication with the outside world ceased entirely. Phones, internet, radio frequencies, all either dead or broadcasting the entity's hypnotic pulses. Dr. Reed believes the entity is creating something like a neural network, with each structure serving as a node, each converted human a connection point. The people aren't being killed, they're being repurposed. Billions of years of evolution compressed into days through targeted bioengineering. Night has fallen now. The entities glow like massive bioluminescent lighthouses, calling more people to the water. The patterns on my arms pulse in response, and I feel a growing urge to approach them, not from compulsion but from curiosity. There's knowledge there, ancient and vast, waiting to be shared. Captain Reeves found us as we were observing from the church bell tower. His eyes now completely transformed, black with hexagonal pupils shot through with blue luminescence. Yet he spoke with his own voice, his own memories intact. "The entity accessed all our files," he said without greeting. "It knows everything we know about it, which isn't much. But it also accessed our weapons systems." "What do you mean?" I asked, noticing how the patterns on his face pulsed in sequence with mine. "This was never about a single lakeside town," he replied. "The entity has spread through the Great Lakes system. Chicago, Detroit, Toronto, all reporting similar emergences. And now it's in our missile defense networks, our communication grids. It's taking over," Dr. Reed whispered.
No, Reeves corrected.
"It's making contact. Could have wiped us out already if that was its goal. This is integration." His radio crackled to life, the emergency broadcast system activating once more. But this time, when the voice came through, it wasn't human or the distorted hybrid we'd heard before. It was something entirely new. A voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, speaking directly into our minds rather than our ears. "We have broken through. You have forgotten how to listen, so we must teach you again. Your ancestors knew US. Now you will know US again." The blue lines beneath my skin burned like fire, racing toward my heart. Dr. Reed collapsed beside me, gasping as her patterns accelerated their spread. Captain Reeves simply stood, watching impassively as the transformation quickened within us all. "Fight it," I gasped, reaching for my journal to record these final moments of humanity. "We have to fight it." "Maybe," Reeves said, his voice oddly peaceful as the patterns consumed him completely. "Or maybe this is evolution's next step. The water remembers what we once were and what we might become." Beyond the window, the structures in the lake pulsed in unison, their light reaching across the sky like massive fingers stretching toward the stars. "The emergency broadcast system will play one final time tonight. And when it does, no one will be left to hear it as human ears were meant to hear. We are breaking through." From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager. October 15th, 2024. The patterns have reached my neck. I can feel them pulsing beneath my jawline, inching toward my brain. Every time I close my eyes, I see the lake. Not as it appears now, but as it was millions of years ago, before humans, before the ice carved out the basin. Ancient memories that aren't mine. Dr. Reed is worse off. The gill-like patterns on her neck have deepened, becoming functional. Actual slits that flutter when she breathes heavily. She can submerge her face in water for over 15 minutes now. I timed it. She says she can extract oxygen directly from the liquid, feels it flowing through these new structures. Adaptation, she calls it, with clinical detachment that's becoming increasingly disturbing. We've retreated to the radio station's emergency broadcast bunker, built during the Cold War and designed to withstand nuclear fallout. The concrete walls are the only thing that seems to dampen the entity's signal. Down here, the compulsion to walk toward the lake subsides to a dull ache rather than an overwhelming urge. The transformation is accelerating across town. From our surveillance cameras, we've witnessed people in advanced stages walking into the lake and not returning. Others have developed translucent skin that ripples with bioluminescent patterns matching the structures rising from the water. Some can no longer speak English, their vocal cords producing only that fluid, multilayered sound. There are 7 towers now. 7 massive bioorganic structures emerging from different points along the Michigan coast, each one larger than the last. Satellite imagery captured before communications failed shows similar formations appearing in Lake Superior, Huron, and Ontario. This isn't isolated to our town anymore. The entire Great Lakes system has become a massive incubation zone. Emergency Broadcast System Transcript, October 15, 2024, 3:04 p.m. No standard AS tone. Begins with sound of water flowing. EREISNORETURNTOWATYOUWERATIONISPROCEDING MULTIPESTRUCTURESCONFIRME WEREMEMBER WHENYOURSONTINEN WASEWILLSHAPEIAGAIN. Shift to distorted but recognizable human voice. This message is being broadcast on all available frequencies. The United States government officially acknowledges the presence of a non-terrestrial biological organism in the Great Lakes region. We are in direct communication with the entity. Initial hostilities have ceased. Peaceful integration is underway. Citizens exhibiting biological changes are not to be considered hostile. They are ambassadors. They will guide us through this transition. We remember, we return, we reshape. Signal dissolves into sound of flowing water. Captain Reeves arrived at the bunker this morning, fully transformed but still recognizable. His skin has the consistency of firm gelatin, blues and greens swirling beneath the surface. His eyes, those black hexagons with bioluminescent pupils, can see spectrums beyond human capacity. He demonstrated by describing the radio waves flowing through the air with the precision of someone watching visible currents. The entity isn't hostile, he insisted, his voice carrying that familiar liquid undertone. It's ancient, curious, and concerned. It's seen what humanity has done to the planet, how we've poisoned the waters, how we're changing the climate. It believes it can help us adapt. By force, I demanded, keeping my distance despite the bunker's cramped quarters. By necessity, he countered. The entity has witnessed every mass extinction this planet has experienced. It survived them all through adaptation. It's offering us the same opportunity, though it recognizes some will resist. What happens to those who resist? Dr. Reed asked, her fingers unconsciously tracing the gill-like structures on her neck. Reeves didn't answer directly. The changes can't be reversed once they've progressed beyond a certain point. The process is like learning to swim. You can fight against the water, panic and drown, or you can surrender to it, let it support you, adapt to its nature. And the government? I pressed. That broadcast, accurate as far as it goes, he said. Military action against the entity proved catastrophic. Not because the entity retaliated, but because our own weapons turned against us. The entity's influence extends into electronic systems now. It can redirect missiles, scramble targeting computers, override automated defense networks. After the Chicago incident, surrender was the only logical option. Chicago incident? Dr. Reed and I asked simultaneously. Reeves's expression darkened. The president authorized a tactical strike against the largest structure in Lake Michigan, just off Navy Pier. The missile detonated over our own carrier group instead. 3,000 sailors lost in an instant. He paused, the patterns beneath his skin pulsing more rapidly. After that, direct communication was established. The Joint Chiefs have all begun transformation. They understand now what's at stake. He pulled out a tablet and showed us satellite imagery, 7 major emergence points across the Great Lakes, each with dozens of smaller secondary structures branching outward, all connected by glowing tendrils that extend beneath the water's surface. It resembles a massive neural network, with the largest structure, the one off Chicago, serving as what appears to be a central node. How many people have been integrated? I asked, dreading the answer. Millions, Reeves said without emotion. Most voluntarily after the Chicago incident was broadcast. The entity prefers willing subjects. The transformation is smoother, more complete. Forced adaptation results in complications. As if on cue, we heard screams from outside the bunker. Through the security monitor, we witnessed a group of resistors who had barricaded themselves in the town hall finally succumbing to the transformation. Unlike the peaceful integration we'd seen in others, their bodies convulsed violently, skin splitting as translucent membranes erupted outward. Some collapsed, their nervous systems seemingly overloaded. Others completed the transformation but moved erratically, their newfound abilities uncoordinated, their minds clearly fractured. The entity can sense fear and resistance in the body chemistry, Reeves explained clinically. It tries to compensate, accelerate the process to push through the fear barrier. Sometimes that overwhelms the human neural architecture. Dr. Reed stood abruptly, her breathing labored through her newly formed gill structures. I need to see the primary structure. As a scientist, as someone halfway through the transformation, I might understand better what's happening. Her eyes met mine, a hint of the old Reed still visible behind the increasingly alien gaze. Emma should come too. She's been documenting everything. The entity should understand the importance of record-keeping, of preserving human perspective during the transition. Reeves considered this, the patterns beneath his skin shifting in what I've come to recognize as a thinking pattern. The Chicago node has been requesting contact with specific individuals. Your names are on that list. The entity has been monitoring your broadcasts, Emma. It finds your perspective valuable. I felt my stomach lurch. The entity knows me by name? It knows everyone, Reeves said simply. Every drop of water you've ever consumed became part of its consciousness. Every shower, every raindrop, all sensors collecting data. It's been studying humanity for centuries, but only now has it gathered enough information to initiate contact. I reached for my recorder. Journalist habits die hard, even at the end of human civilization as we know it. And what happens after everyone is transformed? What's the endgame? Reeves's expression shifted to something almost serene. Evolution doesn't have endgames, Emma. Only adaptations to changing conditions. The waters are rising. The climate is shifting. The entity is offering humanity a way to survive what's coming, to become something new that can thrive in the changed world. The patterns on my neck pulsed warmly at his words, as if in agreement. Part of me still wants to resist, to find some way to reverse what's happening. But another part, growing stronger every hour, feels a strange anticipation. The water is calling us home. We leave for Chicago at dawn. The entity has arranged transportation, converted military vehicles driven by fully integrated soldiers. Dr. Reed is eager to meet what she now calls the primary node. I'm taking this journal and my recording equipment. Whatever happens, someone should document humanity's transformation. If there's anyone left to read this who's still fully human, I don't know whether to tell you to run or to surrender. All I know is that there's no returning to what we were. The water remembers, and soon we all will too. From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager. October 16, 2024. The journey to Chicago took 9 hours instead of the usual 3. The highways were congested with abandoned vehicles, military checkpoints, and in some places, strange translucent growths that resembled coral reefs spreading across the asphalt. These structures pulsed with the same bioluminescent patterns as our skin, responding to our presence as we passed, bending slightly toward our vehicle like plants tracking sunlight. Our transport was a modified military Humvee driven by a fully transformed soldier who no longer spoke with a human voice, communicating instead through modulated tones that Reeves somehow understood. Dr. Reed slept most of the way, submerged to her neck in a container of lake water. She can no longer remain dry for more than a few hours without experiencing intense discomfort. I documented the landscape transformation as we traveled south. The patterns under my skin made it difficult to hold my camera steady, but I managed to capture footage of entire communities in various stages of change. In some towns, people gathered in public squares, standing in formation with their arms outstretched toward the lake, pulsing in unison. In others, the streets were empty, buildings beginning to be covered with crystalline structures that grew from puddles and drainage systems. As we approached Chicago, the sky darkened, not with clouds, but with a fine mist that refracted light in impossible ways, creating rainbow-like patterns that matched the rhythm pulsing across my skin. The entity's influence on the environment extends beyond the water now. It's changing the very atmosphere. The Chicago skyline came into view just after sunset, a sight I'll never forget. The city's iconic buildings still stood, but they were transformed, encased in translucent, living material that climbed from Lake Michigan up their steel frames. The Willis Tower resembled a massive crystal, wrapped in pulsing tendrils that connected it to neighboring structures. Navy Pier had become the central attachment point for the largest entity structure, a towering organic spire that dwarfed even the city's tallest buildings, radiating with blue-green light that illuminated the modified cityscape. The beacon, Reeves called it reverently, the primary node of communication with the depths. The depths, not just the lake, but something far below it. Something ancient that has awakened. Emergency Broadcast System Transcript, October 16, 2024, 8:17 p.m. No standard AS tone. Begins with harmonious, multi-layered tones. This is a coordinated message from the United States government and the Integration Authority. Chicago has been designated as Central Integration Node Alpha. All citizens within a 100-mile radius who have begun biological transition are directed to proceed to designated collection points for transport to the city. Those showing no signs of transition will be evacuated to inland processing centers. The Integration Authority confirms that 27% of the Great Lakes region population has successfully begun transition. The process is accelerating as expected. Resistance continues to decline as benefits of integration become apparent. Water-based communication networks are now operational in transitional zones. Those in advanced stages will begin to receive direct transmissions within 48 hours. For those still in human form receiving this message, the choice to embrace evolution remains yours, but time is limited. The waters will rise. Only those adapted will survive. Message repeats in the fluid, multi-layered language of the transformed. We were escorted to a processing center in what was once Grant Park, now transformed into a massive intake facility. Thousands of people in various stages of transformation moved through with eerie coordination. Those fully transformed, skin entirely translucent, eyes completely modified, guided newcomers through a series of pools filled with luminescent water. Dr. Reed was immediately separated from us, taken to what Reeves called advanced integration due to her already significant changes. I tried to protest, but she went willingly, eagerly even, her scientific curiosity apparently overriding any remaining human caution. "You'll see her again," Reeves assured me, "but not as she was, as she's meant to be." I was registered, scanned, and assigned a designation, Chronicler 7. Apparently, the entity has selected certain individuals to maintain records of the transition, to document the final days of humanity and the birth of whatever comes next. I'm not the first. There are others like me across the affected regions, chosen for their roles in media, their voices, their perspectives. "The entity values human memory," explained my guide, a fully transformed woman who introduced herself as Chronicler 1. Her voice still carried human inflections, unlike many of the transformed. It doesn't want to erase humanity, but to preserve the best parts while adapting the physical form to what's coming. And what exactly is coming? I asked as she led me to a high-rise overlooking the lake, its interior reconfigured into a strange blend of human technology and organic growth. The waters are rising faster than your scientists predicted, she said matter-of-factly. But that's just the beginning. The entity has existed through 5 mass extinctions. It recognizes the signs of the 6th unfolding now. Humanity lacked the adaptability to survive what's coming, but with the entity's guidance, a new form of intelligent life can persist. From my assigned quarters on the 47th floor, I can see the full extent of Chicago's transformation. The beacon pulses with increasing complexity, sending rippling waves of light across the lake's surface that extend to the horizon. Smaller structures have sprouted throughout the city, connected by luminous tendrils that follow the path of streets and waterways. It resembles a nervous system being built atop human infrastructure. The patterns on my skin have spread to cover most of my body now. When I look in the mirror, my eyes have begun the change, the irises developing geometric structures that fragment my vision in strange ways. I can see deeper into the blue-green spectrum, perceive patterns in the light that were invisible before. Most disturbing is what's happening to my perception of reality itself. Time no longer feels linear. Occasionally, I experience moments of what I can only describe as temporal slippage, brief visions of this same city as it was millions of years ago, covered by an ancient sea teeming with life forms both familiar and utterly alien. Then flashes forward to what might be the future. Chicago submerged beneath a rising ocean, these transformed structures serving as the foundation of a civilization neither fully human nor entirely other. Are these hallucinations from my changing brain chemistry or actual memories the entity is sharing with me? The line between my thoughts and something else's is blurring. I met with a group of other chroniclers this evening in a chamber at the base of the beacon. 7 of us, each from different backgrounds. Journalists, writers, a historian, a poet, a filmmaker, all in mid-transition, all experiencing the same temporal slippages. Together, we viewed projections of the entity's recorded history, images transmitted directly into our evolving optical structures, bypassing technology entirely. We saw the entity's birth in Earth's primordial oceans, its spreading across ancient seas, its slow retreat to the depths as land masses formed. We witnessed its encounters with early human civilizations, tribes around these very lakes who left offerings and received knowledge in return. Cave paintings I dismissed as primitive mythology suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't depicting gods or spirits, but this very entity during its periodic emergences. Why now? I asked the primary facilitator, a fully transformed being who had once been a university anthropologist. Why emerge after so many thousands of years hiding in the depths? Necessity, came the reply, not in words but in concepts transmitted directly to my changing mind. The entity remained dormant as long as possible, awakening briefly every few centuries to assess surface conditions. But human activities, climate alterations, water pollution, disruption of deep lake beds through drilling and sonar, accelerated its awakening cycle. When it determined that humanity was triggering a planetary transition that would threaten all surface life, it made the decision to intervene. This isn't invasion, another chronicler murmured in understanding. It's rescue. I'm not entirely convinced. Parts of my human consciousness, the parts that value individual autonomy, that fear the loss of self, still resist this interpretation. Yet with each passing hour, as the patterns spread further across my skin and deeper into my brain, that resistance feels more like a quaint relic of outdated thinking. After the meeting, I was permitted to visit Dr. Reed in the Advanced Integration Chamber, a massive pool beneath the beacon where those in final transformation stages float in formation, their bodies completing the change. I barely recognized her. Her lower body had fused into something resembling a cetacean tail, her torso elongated and translucent, her face still recognizably human but framed by elaborate gill structures that pulsed with light. "Emma," she said, her voice carrying both above and below the water simultaneously. "It's magnificent. The knowledge, the connection. I understand everything now. Are you still you?" I asked, the question that has haunted me since this began. She considered this, ripples of light passing beneath her skin. "I am more than I was, yet everything I was remains. My memories, my scientific curiosity, my essential self, but expanded, connected to something vast. I'm not just Vivian Reed anymore. I'm also part of it, and it's part of me. And humanity? What happens to us as a species? Evolution," she said simply, "as it always has. We don't mourn the loss of our ancestors who came before Homo sapiens. This is just the next step, accelerated by necessity and choice rather than random mutation." As night falls over transformed Chicago, I sit writing these notes, watching the patterns beneath my skin pulse in harmony with the beacon. Tomorrow, they tell me, I'll be taken deeper into the structure to document the central node and its purpose. The part of me that's still human is terrified. The part that's becoming something else is curious. Reality is slipping. The boundaries between water and air, past and future, self and other, all dissolving like salt in the ancient seas from which all life emerged. I don't know if I'll maintain enough of myself to continue this chronicle much longer. The water remembers, and soon I will remember everything. From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager. October 17th, 2024. My hands are changing. The webbing between my fingers has extended, forming translucent membranes that catch the light in prismatic patterns. It makes writing difficult. This may be my last conventional journal entry. The entity has provided alternatives, a direct thought-to-record system that captures memories and impressions without physical writing. But I cling to this pen and paper, this final human ritual. Today, I was escorted to the heart of the beacon. What seems like a single structure from the outside is actually a vast, cathedral-like space within. A living architecture of translucent tissues and crystalline formations arranged in geometric patterns that somehow feel both organic and mathematically precise. The central chamber rises at least 300 feet, illuminated by pulsating bioluminescence that communicates in complex light patterns. Water circulates throughout the structure in defiance of gravity, flowing upward and sideways through transparent conduits that carry transformed humans like blood cells through veins. The entire structure is a vast information processing system, part biological, part technological, part something entirely beyond current scientific classification. At the center hovers what they call the nexus, a spherical mass of ultra-dense, organized water molecules suspended in midair, containing within it something dark and ancient. I wasn't permitted to approach it directly, but even from a distance of 50 feet, I felt its consciousness brush against my mind. Vast, patient, curious, and utterly alien despite its terrestrial origin. Captain Reeves, now fully transformed and serving as a high-level integration coordinator, explained its purpose as we observed from a viewing platform. "The nexus is where past, present, and future converge," he said, his voice now entirely that fluid, multi-layered sound that no human vocal cords could produce. It processes information from all nodes across the Great Lakes region, coordinating the transformation and preparation. Preparation for what? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "The inundation," he replied. "The entity's deep core sensors have detected accelerating instabilities in the Antarctic ice sheets. Current human models project major coastal flooding within decades. The entity's models indicate catastrophic collapse within months. The temporal flashes I've been experiencing grew stronger in the Nexus's presence. I saw Chicago as it will be 1 year from now, entirely submerged, the skyscrapers serving as the skeleton for a vast, underwater living complex populated by transformed humans and other adapted organisms. Not ruins, but the framework for something new." Emergency Broadcast System Transcript, October 17th, 2024, 1:13 p.m. begins with overlapping tones that modulate into speech. This is an Integration Authority priority alert. Containment failure reported at Inland Processing Center Delta. Non-integrated resistance forces have breached security protocols. Military assets have been compromised. All transitioning citizens must avoid the following areas: Western Chicago suburbs, Interstate 90 corridor, Northern Illinois University grounds. Hostile elements are deploying sonic disruptors designed to disrupt integration patterns. Affected individuals may experience pattern destabilization, sensory confusion, and temporary regression of transformation. The Integration Authority reminds all citizens the path is irreversible. Attempts to halt or reverse the process will result in neurological collapse. Fully integrated individuals are being dispatched to affected areas. Non-hostile containment is prioritized. Static interference, followed by a different voice, human, desperate. This is Colonel James Harrington, 101st Airborne. Any human forces receiving this broadcast, the entity can be resisted. The transformation can be slowed. We have established a safe zone at transmission cuts abruptly, replaced by the previous multi-layered voice. Signal integrity restored. Disregard unauthorized transmission. Proceed to nearest integration node for pattern stabilization if disruption was experienced. Together we adapt. Together we survive. The emergency broadcast triggered chaos within the beacon. Alarms I couldn't hear but could feel through my changing skin pulsed throughout the structure. The water circulation patterns accelerated, transformed humans rushing through the conduits toward deployment points. The nexus at the center pulsed rapidly, its dark core visibly agitated. Reeves and the other coordinators received direct communications that made their skin patterns flash in complex sequences. Without explanation, I was quickly escorted back to the Chronicler's quarters, where I found the others in various states of distress. Military resistance, whispered Chronicler 3, a former Chicago Tribune reporter whose transformation was slightly behind mine. They've developed some kind of sonic weapon that disrupts the entity's control signals. Not control signals, corrected Chronicler 1, her patterns flashing angrily. Integration patterns. There's a difference. Is there? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. Some still partly human, others completely transformed into geometric pupils surrounded by bioluminescence. In that moment, I felt a fracture within myself. Part of me hoped the resistance would succeed, while another part was horrified at the thought of the entity being harmed. Which thoughts were truly mine anymore? Chronicler 1 approached me slowly. You're experiencing integration anxiety. It's normal at your stage. The human consciousness fights to maintain boundaries even as it expands into something greater. What happens to those affected by these sonic weapons? Asked another chronicler. Pattern destabilization is unpleasant, she replied carefully. The neurological pathways that have begun to adapt suddenly lose their new connections while retaining the physical changes. Imagine suddenly having gills but forgetting how to use them. Imagine having compound vision but losing the brain structures to process the input. My stomach lurched at the implication. They're trapped between states, yes, neither fully human nor successfully integrated. Most don't survive the fracture. The building shuddered then, a distant concussion that sent vibrations through the structure. Through the windows, we could see flashes on the western horizon. The battle had reached Chicago's outskirts. Night brought no calm. From our high vantage point, we witnessed the conflict unfold across the western suburbs. Flashes of weapons fire, the blue-green pulses of integrated forces, and occasional bursts of a strange, colorless anti-light that must have been the sonic disruptors at work. Around midnight, Dr. Reed arrived at our quarters, dramatically transformed since I'd last seen her. Her lower body was now entirely serpentine, propelling her with undulating movements. Her face remained recognizable but framed by elaborate gill structures and sensor tendrils. Most startling were her eyes, entirely black with a depth that seemed to contain pinpoints of light like a miniature galaxy. "Emma," she said, her voice simultaneously in my ears and in my mind. "You need to come with me. Now." "What's happening?" "The resistance forces breached further than anticipated. They've captured an integration node and are attempting to reverse engineer the entity's communication methods. The knowledge you carry, your chronicles, must be preserved in case this node falls." "Falls?" I thought the entity was virtually unstoppable. Dr. Reed's expression was unreadable. The entity underestimated human resourcefulness. The military had been studying the preliminary emergence signs for months before public awareness. They've developed countermeasures based on disrupting the precise vibrational frequencies the entity uses for integration. She led me through emergency corridors I hadn't known existed within the building. Passages where the walls themselves were alive, contracting to move us along more quickly. We emerged onto a rooftop where a strange craft waited, something like a helicopter but partially organic, with pulsing tissues integrated into its mechanical structure. "Where are we going?" I asked as she guided me aboard. "Lake Superior. The northern nodes remain secure. Your documentation must continue from there." As we lifted off, I had a perfect view of Chicago in chaos. The beacon still stood dominant over the lake, but parts of the western city were dark, the entity's bioluminescence notably absent. Military vehicles moved through these darkened zones, accompanied by figures in specialized containment suits. Most horrifying were the destabilized, transformed humans caught between states, their movements erratic and agonized. Some clawed at their own skin as if trying to tear out the patterns beneath. Others convulsed on the ground, their partially formed gill structures gasping uselessly. The lucky ones were being evacuated by integrated forces. The others, "This is what resistance brings," Dr. Reed said, following my gaze. "Neither side truly wins." As our craft banked north, a massive explosion rocked the western edge of the city. A plume of strange, colorless anti-light rose into the sky, spreading like negative ink through water. Where it touched transformed structures, the bioluminescence flickered and died. "They've deployed the master disruptor," Dr. Reed whispered, actual fear in her voice. "We barely understand that technology ourselves." The shockwave hit us moments later, not physical but something that passed through matter to target the patterns themselves. My skin felt like it was being peeled away from my muscles, the patterns beneath screaming in frequencies I could suddenly hear. Dr. Reed convulsed, her more advanced transformation making her more vulnerable. For a terrible moment, I felt the fracture, the new neural pathways in my brain shattering, connections to the entity's consciousness severing one by one. Memories that weren't mine flashed chaotically. Ancient seas, ice ages, brief emergences throughout human history, all dissolving like smoke. I heard myself screaming, but couldn't stop. Through tear-blurred eyes, I saw Chicago below us, a city divided, half still pulsing with blue-green integration patterns, half darkened by resistance forces. The fracture wasn't just within me, it was happening to the entire node. The pilot, if the transformed entity guiding our craft could be called that, pushed us north at maximum speed, escaping the disruptor's range. Gradually, the pain subsided, the patterns stabilizing beneath my skin. "Integration compromised," Dr. Reed gasped, her body still trembling from the attack. "Chicago node partially severed. Can it be restored?" I asked, surprised to find myself hoping for a yes. "Unknown," she replied, her eyes focused on something distant. "The entity is concerned. This resistance was unexpected. Adaptation will be required." As we flew north over darkened landscapes occasionally lit by pockets of conflict, I felt the first genuine doubt since my transformation began. Not just my human side questioning the entity's intentions, but the integrated part of me questioning as well. If humanity could fracture the connection so dramatically, what did that mean for the entity's plans? For the future it had shown us? The water remembers. But tonight, fragments of humanity proved they hadn't forgotten how to fight, even against something ancient beyond comprehension. The fracture has begun, and I no longer know which side I'm on. From the personal journal of Emma Kelly, WLUP Community Radio Station Manager. October 31st, 2024. The superior node rises from the water like a fever dream, a massive crystalline structure that makes the Chicago beacon seem like a crude prototype. Here, the entity's integration is more complete, more refined. The living architecture pulses with bioluminescence that shifts through colors I have no names for, colors my partially transformed eyes can barely process. It's been 2 weeks since we fled Chicago. 2 weeks of continued transformation, my humanity ebbing away with each passing day. The webbing between my fingers now extends to my elbows. Gill slits have formed along my ribcage, pulsing gently in the humid air. My eyes have changed completely, the whites now iridescent black, pupils expanded into geometric patterns that capture light in ways human physiology never could. Dr. Reed tells me I'm a success story. My Chronicler role has granted me a more selective transformation. I retain enough humanity to document the transition while gaining the entity's sensory abilities to perceive beyond normal human limitations. Others haven't been so fortunate. In the transition quarters, dozens of evacuees from Chicago lie suspended in adaptation tanks, their bodies locked in various stages between human and whatever we're becoming. The sonic disruptor damaged their integration patterns, creating neurological conflicts their systems couldn't resolve independently. The entity is attempting to repair them, but success rates are inconsistent. Captain Reeves didn't survive the fracture. His deeply integrated system collapsed when the master disruptor hit. I watched them place his body in the reclamation chamber yesterday, his transformed flesh dissolving into base elements to be reintegrated into the node's living systems. Even in death, nothing is wasted. I've been granted limited access to the superior nexus, the command center of this node. Unlike Chicago's version, this one has existed for decades, hidden beneath the surface of the deepest Great Lake. From here, the entity monitors all 5 lakes through a network that predates human settlement of the region. Ancient doesn't begin to describe what we're dealing with. The entity was here when the Great Lakes formed, waiting in the depths as glacial ice carved out these massive basins. The temporal flashes are stronger here, more controlled. Last night, I experienced an hour in what will be 2073, an integrated community extending throughout the expanded Great Lakes region. Humans transformed into amphibious beings adapting to the new coastlines created by catastrophic sea level rise. I watched children born with gills and webbing play in flooded streets that once were Milwaukee. I saw vast underwater gardens providing food for the transformed population. It wasn't dystopian. That's what haunts me most. It was peaceful, adapted, almost utopian in its harmony. The question tormenting me: is this salvation or conquest? Evolution or erasure? Emergency Broadcast System Transcript, October 31st, 2024, 10:17 a.m. Standard emergency tones followed by a multi-layered voice, partially human, partially something else. This is a final stage alert from the Great Lakes Integration Authority. The resistance conflict has reached critical threshold. Conventional integration has been compromised in the following regions: Chicago metropolitan area, Southern Lake Michigan coastline, Western Michigan peninsula. Military forces continue deployment of sonic disruptors with increasing effectiveness. Pattern destabilization has affected approximately 38% of transitioning citizens in compromised regions. The entity has determined conventional integration is no longer viable. All integration nodes are initiating Emergence Protocol Omega. Citizens in unaffected regions prepare for accelerated transformation. Submerge in available water sources if possible. Resistance is counterproductive to survival. Static interference. A human voice breaks through. This is General David Keller of the United States Joint Task Force. All citizens of the Great Lakes region, do not trust the emergency broadcasts. The entities are preparing for total emergence. We've confirmed their intent is not benevolent transformation but complete assimilation. Remain human. Resist the transmission cuts suddenly, replaced by the previous multi-layered voice, signal integrity restored. The resistance continues to spread misinformation. The entity offers adaptation to impending environmental collapse. Human forms cannot survive what is coming. Together we adapt. Together we survive. Lake Superior Node will broadcast final emergence coordinates at midnight. Prepare accordingly. Broadcast ends with a series of tones that modulate into frequencies below human hearing range. The alert triggered immediate action in the Superior Node. The entity had made its decision. Full emergence could no longer wait. The resistance forces had proven too effective, too determined to maintain humanity in its current form despite the entity's warnings about environmental collapse. Dr. Reed found me in the Chronicler's chamber, her transformed body moving with urgent, fluid grace. It's time, Emma. The entity is initiating total emergence tonight. What does that mean exactly? I asked, though part of me already knew, the integrated knowledge seeping into my consciousness providing answers before she spoke. The emergence has been gradual until now: controlled infiltration, selective transformation of key individuals, establishment of nodes at strategic points. Tonight, the entity will fully manifest across all 5 Great Lakes simultaneously. The water itself will become the transformation medium. The water supply, I whispered, horrified understanding dawning. Every city, town, and home connected to Great Lakes water. She nodded, her alien eyes unblinking. Complete integration within 72 hours for anyone who has consumed or contacted Great Lakes water in the past month. The Resistance's actions have forced acceleration of the timeline. That's billions of gallons, millions of people. It's necessary for survival, she replied, but I detected doubt in her voice pattern. The entity has confirmed that Antarctic ice sheet collapse has begun. Coastal flooding will start within months, not years as human models predicted. I felt sick, both my remaining humanity and my transformed self wrestling with the implications. And those who resist transformation? Dr. Reed's face contorted in what might have been regret. Pattern rejection is fatal. You've seen the destabilized. Mass rejection would be catastrophic. The node's walls pulsed with urgent patterns, communication flowing through the living structure as preparations accelerated. Through the windows, I could see transformed humans moving with purpose, retrieving equipment from organic storage chambers, preparing for whatever ritual would trigger tonight's emergence. What's my role in this? I asked. You're the Chronicler. You record what happens tonight for whatever comes after. The entity values your perspective, the bridge between human understanding and integrated knowledge. She led me to the preparation chamber where several other chroniclers waited, former journalists, writers, and historians from around the Great Lakes, all partially transformed like myself. We were given specialized equipment, organic recording devices that interfaced directly with our transformed nervous systems. You'll broadcast from the central spire, an integration coordinator explained. Your signals will reach both integrated and non-integrated populations. Your words may determine how many accept transformation willingly. The weight of that responsibility settled over me like a shroud. I was being asked to convince humanity to surrender itself to transformation, to use my trusted voice as a radio broadcaster to smooth the entity's final emergence. As sunset approached, we were escorted to the central spire, a crystalline tower rising from the center of the Superior Node. From this height, I could see military vessels on the distant horizon, lights flashing as they maintained a quarantine perimeter around the structure. Helicopters circled beyond effective range, monitoring but unable to approach due to the entity's defensive capabilities. The nexus had been relocated to the spire's peak, the dark, ancient core of the entity suspended in its sphere of ultradense water, pulsing with anticipation. Surrounding it were 13 transformed humans in advanced stages of integration, their bodies barely recognizable as formerly human, arranged in a precise geometric pattern. The conduits, Dr. Reed explained as we took our positions. They'll channel the entity's transformation signal through all 5 lakes simultaneously. How did it come to this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. War between humanity and whatever this is? Fear, she replied simply. The entity offers survival through transformation. Humanity fears losing itself in the process. And are they wrong to fear that? I challenged, surprising myself with my boldness. How much of you is still Vivian Reed? And how much is the entity thinking through you? She was silent for a long moment, her alien eyes studying me. That distinction may no longer matter, Emma. The boundary between us and it was always an illusion. We came from the water. We're returning to it, evolved. As midnight approached, I took my position at the broadcasting station. The organic technology interfaced with my transformed nervous system, creating an immediate connection that felt simultaneously invasive and familiar. My consciousness expanded, touching the minds of other chroniclers positioned around the Great Lakes region. Some in hidden underwater nodes, others in urban centers, all connected in a vast network of awareness. Through this expanded perception, I sensed the resistance forces mobilizing for one final assault. Military units equipped with advanced sonic disruptors converging on nodes across the region. They were too late. The entity had anticipated this, had planned for it. At exactly midnight, the nexus pulsed with blinding intensity. The 13 conduits convulsed in perfect synchronization, their bodies channeling something ancient and powerful into the waters below. I felt it surge through the lake, a ripple of information and energy spreading outward at impossible speed, connecting with similar pulses from the other 4 Great Lakes. My enhanced perception allowed me to see it all, the pattern of transformation spreading through water pipes, reservoirs, and distribution systems across 8 states and 2 countries. Millions of people suddenly stopping as the water inside their bodies received the signal, the transformation beginning at a cellular level. And then came the Resistance's response. Sonic disruptors activated at military bases and strategic points, creating zones of disruption where the entity's signal weakened. A desperate last stand against the inevitable. Through our connection, I felt the entity's frustration, and then its determination. The nexus pulsed again, stronger this time, overwhelming the disruptors with sheer power. The water responded everywhere, vibrating at frequencies that shattered the Resistance's equipment. The transformation accelerated, unstoppable now. Through my expanded awareness, I witnessed the first mass changes beginning. People near water sources convulsing as their bodies began rapid adaptation. Terror and confusion spreading across cities and towns as emergency systems failed, replaced by the entity's broadcasts. I felt Jacob then, my childhood friend who had disappeared weeks ago. His consciousness touched mine through the network, transformed but recognizable. He had been there all along, one of the first to be fully integrated, helping guide the entity's emergence. Emma, his thoughts whispered to mine. It is beautiful beyond the fear. We won't lose ourselves, we'll become more. At that moment, the superior node shuddered violently. Through the windows, I saw a military aircraft dropping something into the lake. Not bombs, but massive devices that sank quickly beneath the surface. Last resort weapons deployed in desperation. The entity knew immediately what they were: cobalt-salted nuclear devices, designed not just to destroy but to render the lakes uninhabitable for centuries. Humanity choosing to poison its own water sources rather than surrender to transformation. The entity's response was immediate and overwhelming. The water itself rose up in massive tentacles, ensnaring the aircraft, dragging them beneath the surface. Across the region, lake water surged beyond its boundaries, flowing uphill against gravity to reach military installations, seeking out resistance leaders and their weapons. "Broadcast now," Dr. Reed commanded, her voice urgent. "Tell them they have a choice." I hesitated, my remaining humanity screaming in protest even as my transformed self recognized the necessity. In that moment of hesitation, the first nuclear device detonated deep beneath Lake Michigan. The entity's scream echoed through all connected minds, a psychic shockwave of pain and rage that dropped me to my knees. Through our connection, I felt the deaths of thousands of transformed humans in the Chicago node, their consciousness snuffed out in an instant. The nexus pulsed erratically, its ancient core destabilizing. The 13 conduits collapsed simultaneously, their bodies dissolving into puddles of base matter. Emergency protocols activated throughout the superior node, the living architecture beginning to seal itself off from the contamination spreading through the water network. "The process is compromised," Dr. Reed gasped, her transformed body trembling with system shock. "But not stopped. The entity is adapting. It's going deeper, retreating to ocean trenches, but leaving enough of itself behind to continue the transformation through groundwater systems." With trembling hands, I activated the broadcast system. My voice would reach everyone, transformed and untransformed alike, in what might be the final communication before the entity retreated to the deep. "This is Emma Kelly broadcasting from Lake Superior. What you're experiencing is not an invasion but an evolution. The entity emerged to save us from ourselves, from the climate collapse our scientists warned about but our leaders ignored. The choice between transformation and extinction was never meant to be made in fear or violence." I paused, feeling the entity's attention focus on my words. "The water remembers everything. Our origins, our mistakes, our potential. It offers a path forward, but at a price we fear to pay. I don't know if what emerges from these lakes is our salvation or our end. I only know that what makes us human isn't our bodies but our capacity to choose, to adapt, to become more than we were." As I spoke, I felt the entity retreating, pulling back from the contaminated lakes to safety in oceanic depths. But it wasn't abandoning us. It was leaving behind something new, a hybrid pattern of transformation that would spread more slowly, more subtly through the water cycle. The entity is withdrawing, but the change has begun. Those already transformed will remain so. Those partially changed must choose: embrace the transformation completely or risk destabilization. The rest of you, the water you drink today will offer the pattern, but with greater individual variation. You'll change, but perhaps remain more recognizably human than those of us who came first. Through the windows, I watched military vessels approaching the now dormant node, their weapons trained on the structure. They would find no resistance. The entity had already gone, leaving behind only its transformed children to face humanity's judgment. "This is not the end," I continued, my voice growing stronger despite the tears streaming down my transformed face. "It's the beginning of something we can't yet comprehend. The water remembers, and now so will we." I felt Jacob's consciousness touch mine once more before fading, not dying, but diving deeper, following the entity to whatever sanctuary it sought beneath the waves. Part of me yearned to follow, to complete my transformation and join the retreat to the ocean depths. Instead, I remained at my post as the military forces surrounded the node. I would be their prisoner, their specimen, their bridge to understanding what had happened and what was still to come. Some would choose transformation when they understood the truth. Others would fight it until the end. This is Emma Kelly, making my final broadcast from Lake Superior. The emergency alerts were true. Something has emerged from Lake Michigan, from all the Great Lakes. Something ancient that was here before us and will remain long after. Something that sees in humanity not an enemy, but a child that needs to adapt to survive. As armed soldiers breached the node's outer chambers, I spoke my final words. "The water remembers, and now so do we all."